Welcome. This video lecture is to accompany the Jacksonian America Unit in History 121. In this video, we will discuss national politics in 1840 and 1841. This includes the candidates, the campaign, the winner, and that winner's administration. So without further ado, let's LLZ. Let's go. The 1840 presidential campaign, aka the first modern presidential election, starring Old Tippecanoe and Tyler too. In 1840, the Democrats renominated the Red Fox, Martin Van Buren, who ran on his record. For the Whigs, Henry Clay had wanted the nomination because he always wants the nomination, and Henry Clay thought that even though he couldn't beat Andrew Jackson, certainly he could beat Martin Van Buren. However, his fellow Whigs weren't so sure, and they really were not interested in the two-time loser that was Henry Clay. Instead, what they wanted was a Whiggish Jackson. And they found one in William Henry Harrison, a war hero from the War of 1812. Also, Harrison, aka Old Tippecanoe, had an impressive record from his time as governor of Indiana. Later, it was reported that Henry Clay, while drunk, complained that he was the most unfortunate man in the history of political parties, who was always delegated to run when he was sure to be defeated, and now betrayed for the nomination when he or anyone else but Martin Van Buren would be sure of an election. By 1840, the Whigs had mastered the Democrats' campaign tactics. They used chants, they used songs, they used parades, they used souvenirs, and they used other trinkets to promote their log cabin candidate, William Henry Harrison. Newspaperman Anthony Banning Norton told his readers that Van Buren had been brought up in affluence and had lived in luxury and had spent his days as a lawyer and politician in the fashionable circle, while Harrison had been from his youth on the frontier, a soldier during hardship and privation. This was a lie. It did not help that Van Buren enjoyed style. He enjoyed the theater, he enjoyed the opera, and he enjoyed eating fine foods. He also enjoyed wearing coats with velvet collars and soft leather gloves. But the irony of this, and why this statement was a lie, is that it was Harrison who was the one who was brought up on a Virginia plantation, with tutors to oversee his education. Meanwhile, Martin Van Buren was the son of a not-so-terribly successful saloon owner. The Whigs in 1840 chose not to run on a platform. They did not address the issues. Nicholas Biddle, you might remember him as director of the Second Bank of the United States, formerly, he described William Henry Harrison as a candidate of the past, not of the future. And Biddle recommended that the former general go with his strengths. Biddle writes, "Let him not utter a single word about his principles or his creed. Let him say nothing, promise nothing. Let no committee, no town meeting even extract for him a single word about what he thinks now or what he will do thereafter. Let the use of pen and ink be wholly forbidden, as if he were a mad poet in Bedlam." And that last part, Biddle is referencing the mental hospital in London at the time. The significance of the 1840 presidential campaign. This campaign is considered the first modern election, as active campaign by party members is preferred to lack of campaigning altogether. However, the candidates still stay home, or in Martin Van Buren's case, he stays in the White House. And by using this new strategy, the Whigs win the election and thus create a winning formula. 1. Shun Henry Clay. 2. Nominate a war hero who's popular. 3. Ignore the issues. Do not have a platform. What the Whigs have learned here in 1840 is what the Democrats knew already in 1828 and 1832. What matters is popularity, not virtue. If virtue was a consideration, Van Buren would have been the winner. But he's not. Instead, it is William Henry Harrison, and the Whigs have their first president. Speaking of William Henry Harrison, on March 4th, 1841, Harrison became the oldest person elected to the presidency. Of the 45, only Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump were older at the time of their inauguration. 30 days later, Harrison became the first president to die in office, thus setting the record for the shortest amount of time as president. You might recall the rule of zero here. The 8th president is also the only president to have one of his grandchildren become president, and this is Benjamin Harrison, the 23rd president, who was elected in 1888. And although the Whigs claimed that Harrison was a self-made man who grew up in poverty, Harrison was the son of a prominent Virginia plantation owner, Benjamin Harrison. Benjamin Harrison also happened to be a member of the Second Continental Congress on July 4, 1776, thus making him also a signer of the Declaration of Independence. This earned Benjamin Harrison the nickname the Signer in the process. Unlike what the campaign material said, Harrison was not born in a log cabin. He actually owned 2 estates, one in Indiana and one just north of Cincinnati, Ohio. Historian Gail Collins has stated that the Whig spin on Harrison was so successful or so irrational that party propagandists could extol Harrison's humble roots in one breath and then brag about his lineage as the son of one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence in the next. The Harrison administration. As president, the Whigs expected Harrison to be cooperative with their unwritten platform. What I mean here is Henry Clay's American system. But Harrison was not a Clay supporter. In fact, he didn't nominate Clay or any of Clay's Whigs to his cabinet. Instead, Harrison nominated Daniel Webster to be his Secretary of State. Webster hoped that he could be the influential Whig in the cabinet, not Henry Clay. For other appointments, Harrison looked toward the South. For Secretary of War, he nominated John Bell. For Attorney General, he nominated John Crittenden. This is notable because John Bell was Jackson's rival in Tennessee, and John Crittenden was Clay's rival in Kentucky. Now, Harrison wanted to prove something to the American people, that he was still old Tippecanoe of the War of 1812, that he was not Granny Harrison of 1841, an old man. Thus, Harrison, on Inauguration Day, delivered the longest inaugural speech on record. It's 1 hour and 40 minutes. The text included a 100-word opening sentence that I wanted you to see, so it is on your study guide. This is it. Called from the retirement from which I had supposed was to continue for the residue of my life to fill the chief executive office of this great and free nation, I appear before you, fellow citizens, to take the oaths which the Constitution prescribes as a necessary quantification for the performance of its duties, and in obedience to a custom coeval with our government and what I believe to be your expectations, I proceed to present to you a summary of the principles which will govern me in the discharge of the duties which I shall be called upon to perform. That is a mouthful, and that's just the first sentence of the pared down version. That was 1 hour and 40 minutes long. And even though it was a cold and wet day in Washington, D.C., old Tippecanoe refused to wear a coat or top hat during the parade or on stage. Thus, the weather that day, the stress of being president of the United States, and the constant politicking for government positions that defines the spoils system drained Harrison's health and left him defenseless against pneumonia. On April 4th, 1841, Harrison died, leaving a vacancy in the White House that would be filled by John Tyler. And I guess you could say Harrison really did prove something, that he wasn't old Tippecanoe any longer. He truly was Granny Harrison, an old man. I want to thank you for watching this video on the first modern presidential election, the election of 1840. Merci beaucoup, and may the force be with you.